people on the bank. And this is Zelensky regime, the Kiev neo-Nazism. It is well paid and well armed and supported for many years this political information by the collective West. And so it was ordered by the collective West to do this dirty job, to put the blame on our country. The Westerners themselves changed within 24 hours its statements that they closely watch, that they are not ready to make some assessments, or just said it for the words to condemn the terrorist acts and to the words of compassion. And they found this culprit as a banned organization, ISIS. Let me remind for those who suddenly forgot, in preparing not an act of sabotage against our country just recently, I think it was 15 days ago, top officers of Germany confessed to us. And these were the video record released of their negotiations of four. These top officials, representatives of armed forces of Germany. They are talking with themselves. They discussed how to better to dismantle the Russian civilian infrastructure. It was about the Crimean Bridge, and we'll talk about it later in more detail. After this video record, no one in Berlin could explain to its compatriots and to the international community as a whole on which grounds today Germany believes it possible at the state level to discuss acts of sabotage, terrorist acts, and extremism, which must be committed exactly by some other hands as they planned it on the territory of some other states. Today we'll talk about the response of the international community. All these years, these terrorist acts by Zelensky regime, we'll talk about it in detail. So, in order to hide these suspicions from Washington, Berlin, London, which in direct words discussed possible terrorist acts in Russia, Paris, and other NATO countries, they need to urgently find something or some explanation. So they resorted to ISIS. They remembered this almost forgotten trick, and after some few hours of these terrorist acts, CNN, New York Times, and many other mass media started to disseminate exactly these theories. With the main thing, ISIS is responsible for everything. Allegedly, it was coming from the materials of the foreign mass media. The beginning of March, the United States shared intelligence that one of its branches planned the terrorist attacks in Moscow. But it's hardly to believe that these groups, which has about 4,000 or 6,000 people, has such huge capabilities. And if they have, we need to wait for the official results of the investigation. We once again saw this link of this Western political establishment, including special services, with their Western means of mass media. The mass media focused a lot on the personalities of these barbarian acts, focusing first of all to sow discord and to intimidate. It is a well-known scenario and footprint, a colonial and neo-colonial footprint, unfortunately. These fake news and this scheme and these guidelines bring us back to the times of these 20 years ago. This is a tactics which has been worked out for many times. All these words from Washington, Mr. Kirby, was frustrating not only abroad, but inside the United States. First of all, he said that we need to get some more information about what has happened in order to sort out what has happened. So that is the reasonable thing. You need to wait for the results of some original forensics, the work of investigative authorities, but just in a few hours, they sorted out everything in the White House. And the White House, along with the State Department, declared, and I quote, that Ukraine has nothing to do with that. End of quote. So what information was based in the conclusions? They're trying to cover the Kiev regime in order to cover up themselves, because everybody understands that no independent Kiev regime without the Western funds, military support, this cannot be the way. But the question whether the United States knew this in advance, Mr. Kirby said that you need to address to the State Department. Can you just think, and it's very important, when they had to answer the question on who is behind this terrorist act in Russia, the State Department took just a few hours, and they were very quick to respond. And when the White House was asked whether this White House shared some intelligence with Moscow, they failed to answer. They said that journalists must address to some other agencies. This is your zone of responsibility. This is your competence. This is your actions. Why you cannot answer for your actions? But you can sign out and issue a recipe for what you are completely don't have a knowledge or experience, but you've said that you have them. And you are ready to do this at once. I would like to remind that on the 7th of March, the American embassy called its citizens not to visit the shopping malls. Likewise, the other Western countries, so it proves that some special services had some information on possible terrorist attacks. So we also took the note, some synchronization of condolences of the representatives of the Western authorities from statements of Washington. The satellites of the United States published through the social networks after by receiving the blessing of the overseas Big Brother. Of course, the Sweden authorities and some NATO countries, for example, were highlighted. For example, Novichok in NATO, Sweden. The first hours after the attack, the Sweden authorities made just a brief statement that they strictly follow the developments, and if just catching the whole tone of the statements, Stockholm expressed more adequately its condolences. Likewise, some other officials, for example, of Moldova, which squeezed with scanty words after strict condemnation by the opposition politicians and Russian-speaking diaspora. So the Moldovan authorities, whose citizens could have been there, the citizens by nationality or by family, and the authorities in Chisinau could not find the words of compassion. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania blasphemously tweeted, and he said, let's not lose focus. You can lose not the focus. You don't want to lose the target. And that's the case, so you need to say so. Representatives of Ireland, Canada, and New Zealand tried to keep silence until the last moment. But as I've said, the Zelensky regime is the only one who accused Russia's involvement of these terrorist acts in Crocus Hall. And then they tried to say that they were understood in some other way. But we fixed this statement. We recorded all this video, audio, and messages which were tweeted these hours or on internet or television. We've seen this, how official figures representing the Kiev regime jointly with all those who call themselves as Ukrainian journalists. But in fact, they not only even propagate terrorism. We're sitting for hours in live, in the internet, and talking about the blame of Russia and its leaders because of this terrorist act. Under the headline, Moscow kills its own citizens. How can it be so? So let me remind you that the funds of this criminal organization has been going on for many years. It has started back then with Obama's administration when the Vice President Biden is the President of the United States. For 10 years, Ukraine, with the hands of the West, has been becoming the center of organized crime. This dance on graves by the Ukrainian propagandists, when people from all the continents feel compassion and express the words of condolences and condemn this terrorist act. We are grateful to all those who did not remain indifferent. We are grateful to the heads of parliaments and states, the leaders of many authorities, international organizations, NGOs, religious associations, and some indifferent citizens for this compassion because of this deadly tragedy. At this moment, the true nature of a man is being revealed. Although this inhumane language of the professional singers of terrorism were lost in this flow of compassion, by these acts and declarations, the supporters of the Kiev regime once again showed all the depth of their nature of an animal. This neo-Nazism in Ukraine, built on the hatred to all the Western mainstream, did not tell its interlocutors. They did not become the target of some animation pictures. They're not being questioned to the court in some human rights organization. They are not even come under this culture of cancel. In order to, according to George Bush, the Jr. words, they killed more Russians because, when developing this thought, the representatives of the White House and the current administration of Joe Biden, this is a good deal.
And surely, I cannot keep silent when I talk about what happened in Vilnius on March 24th, because an unknown person came to our embassy and broke several shovels in the memory of those who were killed in Crocus City Hall. In Lithuanian, he shouted this Nazi motto, glory, and so on. But instead of Ukraine, he said ISIS. But I think he hears what we say in the White House. This terroristic group, which is prohibited in Russia, let me remind you, it is prohibited in Russia, and the perpetrator did manage to hide after committing this crime. The police only arrived later on and witnesses of the fact that our fight against global terrorism should be the main focus of all the efforts of the international community, and not just the NATO countries. And Russia will support all the efforts in fighting against terrorism. We condemn it in all forms, in all manifestations, no matter where terrorist acts take place. And the intentional killings of civilians is unacceptable. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia grieves together with those who are related to people killed, and we wish all the best and a quicker healing to all the people who are injured, and we hope that everyone who is to blame will be punished for that. You can refer to the socials of the MFA because you can see how many condolences were expressed. Representatives of MFAs, governments, agencies expressed their condolences. You can find videos on the Telegram channel of the Minister of Foreign Affairs and of Moscow embassies abroad. I would like to thank all those who did not remain indifferent and made this tragedy a part of their own destiny, who expressed their humanity, who did not step aside, and we see what the world grieves together with us. This tragedy also touched upon the Minister of Foreign Affairs because Tatiana Alexeyevna, who worked as a specialist of the first group in the Department of Linguistic Assistance of MFA, and we grieve together with her relatives. And yet another statement which I think steps aside, I'm talking about the statement of the Estonian Foreign Minister. We're talking about the Russophobic nature of many politicians of this Baltic state. We talk about this all the time. It's difficult for me to quote this, but I'll have to do so. On the side of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, the following comment was published. Yesterday's attack on the concert hall in Moscow, and that's a direct quote from official statement of the MFA of Estonia, showed that the Russian regime was focused on, I'll highlight what these are the words of the MFA of Estonia, was aimed at conquering the neighboring countries and organizing crime instead of caring about the welfare of the young people. Then the MFA of Estonia went even further, saying that this was the very first case in history that the Russian leadership used, the way they said, terrorist acts in Moscow with civilians killed to justify its policy. And let me say once again, but I don't think that anyone can surpass Zelensky, but this is a claim. And you can see that this methodical words were sent to those who were falling behind in their development and so on. So who could voice such a thing? The MFA of Estonia, Zelensky himself? I think these are people of the same kind who could voice such a thing, or sign under such a thing. But this were the very words which were used to describe the tragedy in Moscow. And before that, we had no illusions about the lack of conscience of the Estonian foreign minister, but his latest statements make us question his common sense and whether he's sane. What Zelensky is not mentally healthy. We talk about this all the time. We see that he is dependent on psychotropic agents and drugs. But I think that the MFA of Estonia should have their leadership checked as well after he had made such a statement. I'd like to say that in Estonia itself, people expressed sincere condolences to our people. They brought flowers to the embassy of Russia. And in the Baltic states, they do so no matter whether they're being deterred or not, whether there is a prohibition to do so or not. And we hold this in high esteem. And another shocking thing, we draw attention to the statement made by Secretary General of the National Criminal Police Organization, Jürgen Stock, which was published in social media, and he said he was ready to support the investigation of the terrorist attack on Krakow City Hall. So what does this mean? It means that the Secretary General, in his capacity as the head of Interpol on behalf of the entire world police community, confirmed the inviolability of the fundamental principles of organizations which are laid down in its charter. Article 2 of the Interpol Charter calls for ensuring and promoting the widest police cooperation. In this sense, the coordination of information exchange on the detection and investigation of offences is a key task of Interpol. So it would therefore be strange not to receive such a statement from such an organization. But at the same time, I would like to draw your special attention to this fact. I would like to understand how Jürgen Stock's words relate to the controversial and obviously damaging decision of the executive committee of the organization made in 2022, so 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago that Interpol decided to introduce restrictive measures on data exchange with respect to the Russian Federation. And let me remind you that we are one of the key participants of Interpol. So I think that some of this is wrong. And I'm 100% sure that these two decisions, these two statements are contradicting each other. And we support the words of Jürgen Stock. We support his statement about Interpol's readiness to aid us with information exchange. I think that this is in line with the charter of Interpol. But then Interpol has to do something with the statement of 2022. This measure is once again confirmed that Interpol is being persistently drawn by the West into a political game, the main purpose of which is to disconnect the Russian Federation from Interpol's information resources and further exclude it from the organization. I would like to remind you of Article 3 of the Charter, which prohibits the organization from any interference in activities of a political nature, which allows it to link the law enforcement agencies of 196 member countries, even in the absence of diplomatic relations. And for the situation in Ukraine, I would like to start with the situation in Krakow City Hall. As I already said, almost the whole world came out with a strong condemnation of a terrorist attack. It was later on that the Westerners joined the choir, but for one country, and it's just one country left, which was against it. I'm not sure we can talk about this state, about the country. Let's talk about the Kiev regime. What's more cynical, inhumane, and gloating comments appeared on Ukrainian social networks. And I would like to pose the following questions to American social network platforms. Have you not decided to delete those inhumane posts which call upon killing Russians because you sympathize with those terrorists who kill civilians in the concert hall, in the theater hall, during a concert? You do the same thing, but you do so in the informational environment. And for all these years, and I refer to those internet platforms, for all these years, you have been calling upon all the extremists to kill Russians, even if it was prohibited to kill other people. Apart from the death, pain, and suffering of innocent people gives some people of the Kiev regime and other people some kind of cannibalistic satisfaction. I'm talking about all those people who can justify the killings of people, of Russian-speaking people, of Russians. I think it's very